Welcome back, everybody. We've made it to the final session of the program, and it's an exciting one. We've assembled a panel of experts with a track record of innovating new products and services. And this 45-minute discussion will be led by the great Tapi Sadiku. Tapi has worked with Kraft Heinz for the past 4 years and currently serves as their global head of employee digital experience, where her focus is to increase employee productivity and creativity through technology. She also serves as a future of work specialist for the World Economic Forum, as well as a board member for the Institute of Work and the Economy and the Science and Technology Coalition. It's my pleasure to welcome Tapi Sadiku.
Hi, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I think everyone is based in Chicago, but what is Zoom like these days? I feel like you have to say good day because you don't know where in the world everybody is. I hope you've all enjoyed the day. I think it's been fantastic. I'm really, really excited to moderate this panel. We've got some phenomenal, trust me, like seriously phenomenal people. And I don't just throw that around that often or that much. But what I wanted to do before we start is I wanted to kind of give you guys a bit of an overview of how the session will go. So I'm going to briefly introduce all of the panelists. I'll ask them some questions, and then we'll take some questions from the audience. By the way, guys, I'm sure you know the drill. This is actually being recorded, so don't worry about taking notes. You can watch the recording later. You can also use the Q&A if you have like any questions. And also when we invite questions from the audience, come off mute, like speak, show your face, use your voice. So anyway, I'm going to start to introduce our phenomenal panel. First person is John Higginson. Now, John is the Chief Technology Officer for Groupon. I'm sure everybody knows what Groupon is. I'm sure actually you can recognize by my accent that I'm actually English. Now, I used Groupon back in London. I didn't even know it was founded in Chicago. John has actually been the CTO at Groupon since January of 2020. And we had a little joke that I said, like, wow, you literally came just before the pandemic. Like that has got to have been a challenge in and of itself, especially considering Groupon's like business model. Now, John is also actively involved in the Chicago tech community. He supports diversity and inclusion organizations for women and minorities and serves as a mentor for early stage companies. In fact, prior to joining Groupon, he served as the CTO for Innovator International, a publicly traded Chicago-based fintech. John, thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Next, we have Lily, and Lily is the Director of Corporate Development at Molex. Now, Lily, I met you yesterday. Lily has literally lived all over the world. I have lived in a number of different cities in Europe, and America being a different continent, but Lily has literally lived all over the world, in fact, also in London. And I'm keen to hear how all of those different like experiences and different places have kind of shaped your leadership and your innovation spirit. Now, Lily blends expertise in finance, research, analysis, emerging technologies. And now she serves on the front line fostering innovation at Molex within the electronics industry. She's responsible for promoting the entrepreneurial ecosystem by working directly with forward-thinking startups, incubators, angel groups, venture capital firms, and corporate venture capital groups, with a focus on making strategic equity investments in promising early stage companies. Lily, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Pleasure. And last but not least, we have Greg Hedges. Now, Greg, I didn't get to meet you yesterday, so I'm going to use this as an opportunity to get to know you more.
Uh-oh.
And you are the managing director at, I hope I pronounced it correctly, Protiviti. Is that right?
Protiviti, and that sounds pretty good to me.
Okay, fantastic. You are actually the founding managing director at Protiviti, sorry. The leading global risk consultancy with thousands of professionals and 72 offices in 21 countries. Wow.
Yeah.
You have over 35 years of experience, although you don't look it, I guess.
Well, it's actually 40, okay. It's
oh, wow. Okay,
already,
well, even more. And you help CEOs and board members explore and understand the challenges and opportunities they face with emerging technologies. So welcome, my phenomenal panel. Okay, guys, I've got a question to start. I think it's a nice little icebreaker. And I want to open this up to the entire panel. And let's just go back to basics. A question that I think people in the audience may be curious about is, what does it mean to be an innovator? And actually, is it actually a thing you can be? You know, are you an innovator, or is it like a behavior? How would you describe the role? And well, first of all, what does it mean to be an innovator? And is it a thing you can be? And then second of all, can we talk about the role innovation plays in your organizations? Who would like to go first?
Should I say ladies first? So my background is in accounting. So as we all know, between Enron and Huawei, being creative in accounting is probably not the right approach where you want it to go. But for me, I think being innovator is really a mindset, right? It's identifying the right problem to solve at the right time, providing that solution. And you have to have the girth and the confidence to propose your solution and not be afraid to be that red-headed stepchild in a room and stand out and not be the conformist and go with the flow and be able to challenge the status quo. Mm-hmm. At Molex, I think for those of you who don't know Molex, or rightfully most people do not know Molex because we are actually in the B2B business and we support a lot of the brand name electronic devices that you're currently using in person when you're carrying in your pocket or wearing it on your wrist, or whether that's in your home. So anything that has any sort of electronic content, I guarantee you there is a Molex product that is in there. So for Molex, I think innovation is do or die for us. If we do not innovate, if we do not offer something that our customer needs or predict what the customer needed to see in the next generation, we become irrelevant. We will get our share taken up by our competitor who is willing to disrupt. So I guess in this case, I would say, if we fail to disrupt the industry, then we become a non-matter in the industry.
Love it. Don't be afraid to shake things up. I like that. My mother used to always say, speak up, even if your voice shakes. And I think that still applies like in business today, right? Because sometimes you can just be like the lone voice. You got to keep confident.
And Tope, you had asked about a behavior or so, and I teach a class at Notre Dame in emerging technologies, and the type of thing I suggest to our master's candidates on the how do you actually innovate is just, the first one's just be curious. And it's like, well, okay, take it one step further. How do you just be curious? I think the key there is to ask, why is it the way it is? And sometimes you have to peel down 3 layers of why is it the way it is to really get to a root cause. Maybe it's a process that's messed up. Maybe there's a situation that's confusing. Those are ripe for innovation, but asking and getting to the root cause as to why it is the way it is, that's the sort of thing you want ideas will spring from, because otherwise you're just fixing symptoms. You need to innovate, addressing root causes. So it's be curious. And like Lily was saying, I always tell them to be wide open to things that go against the grain, embrace that. And then finally, just be comfortable being uncomfortable. You got to manage ambiguity and be okay with that and not feel like everything has to be in a nice, neat box. You just got to kind of run with it. So.
Oh, I love that. I absolutely love that. You know, I do tell people you should be comfortable being uncomfortable in the small things so you can be comfortable being uncomfortable in the big things.
In the big, right?
And I the way I apply it is like in my life, I started doing these archery classes. And my friends are like, why are you doing archery? There's like no commercial value. And I thought, I don't know. I just don't know if I'm even good at it. And sometimes it's nice to kind of go back to basics and have that learner's mentality because you question everything. And I'm curious, Greg, like, what does that look like in productivity and like innovation? How does that feel? Where do you see it play out?
It's kind of cool because our values, what those 3 I's that we keep stumbling over, just like you did, Tope, when we started the company, we came up with this productivity, 3 I's: innovation, inclusion, and integrity. So it's just part of our DNA. And we trained 8,000 people in design thinking around the world. That everybody could just embed that in the service that they deliver. So that's one way we've done it.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Greg, personally, I am really going to reach out to you after this panel because I just came out of a call and where we were looking at how we can train our IT employees on design thinking. And there's like 300 people. And literally that was what I just came out of. So I'm going to talk to you about that.
Thrilled to share that with you.
Thank you. So John, I'm curious. Let's talk a bit about Groupon. I think Groupon is the one, first of all, it's the company I can pronounce. Second of all, it's the company that I definitely know what you guys do. But I'm curious, like with everything that has happened in the last 18 months in business, when your business model is so focused on people being out there and interacting with one another, what does innovation mean in Groupon and how do you see it play out?
Yeah, I think, I'll start with my short definition of innovation, which is, I'll quote Steve Jobs, think different. I think that's the heart of innovation. It's a mindset, and it is really either new things or just things that you do every day. Just think differently about it. My least favorite phrase at work ever is, well, John, we've always done it that way. And I stop people before they get to the end of that sentence. Groupon, in a way that like in a fiction story that people wouldn't believe, we actually announced right before the start of COVID that we were going to really lean into in-person experiences. It's always been a core part of our marketplace, everything from personal beauty and wellness experiences like massages and nails to like architecture tours. And of course, a month later, nobody was doing anything in person. And so we had to really, on the fly, rethink about how we were going to show up for our consumers and our merchants. I mean, I think one of the things people probably don't know as much about with Groupon is that we have hundreds of thousands of merchants that we are the digital presence for. That, for a long time, we've been the one way for them to show up to a larger audience. And so we had to figure that out. And in some cases, that was working with merchants to do virtual versions of their classes. We have a lot of beauty and wellness classes that were like yoga studios. We help them become virtual.
Oh, wow.
For our consumers, it was everything from giving them the ability to understand which businesses were compliant with COVID protocols to having, flexibility around booking and around dates. And so, and not to mention the fact that we also had to figure out how to take a roughly 5,000 person workforce around the globe and allow them to work from home, including in places in rural India, in a matter of weeks.
Oh, wow.
So we had a very interesting March where we just had to figure out a lot of things very quickly. And, credit to the team, like when we said, like, look, it's kind of like an Apollo 13 moment, right? Failure is not an option. We have to get creative, and the team really responded, and we came in with a lot of great solutions for our customers and for ourselves as well.
Okay, so by the way, we are going to talk a bit more about how everybody has responded to this pandemic, because I'm just very, very curious. But John, I really want to kind of dig into it, something that you alluded to. You had to move 5,000 people globally remote, or two different locations where they wouldn't be so closely together. And I'm curious, and actually this is another question for the entire panel. How did you keep like connection? Does innovation actually require like that physical presence? And how do you keep people, in a time where some may argue people feel disconnected and really far away from like organizational culture, and like even beginning to challenge, like, is this organization's values, purpose still connected to who I am? How did you guys do that? John, maybe because you were just talking about it, if we talk about how you did that at Groupon, and then Lily, Greg, open it up to you both.
If you had asked me before COVID if it were possible or even easy to do innovation remotely, I would have been a hard no. I have always been the person that says, let's go to this room, let's grab some markers, let's go to the whiteboard, let's start drawing things. And COVID actually, the quarantines forced us to work in different ways. And for us, it was just finding ways to create those kind of ad hoc connections that we wouldn't otherwise have had. And we started doing things like we started doing virtual coffees, and we'd have a randomized list, and people would show up for these virtual coffees. People that hadn't really talked to one another or met each other at Groupon would do that. Groupon has long had this kind of hacking culture where people individually like play around with ideas and come up with that. And we just made that a more formal thing. We have this hackathon we call Geek On, and Geek On happens twice a year. We encourage people to team up with folks that they haven't worked with across Groupon, and they get a week away from their regular work to come up with those ideas, prototype them, and show it. And then, you know, there's a vote, and there are winners, and we announce that. And so we did a lot of things like that in a virtual space, and that wound up being really transformative for us. It made sure that the ideas kept coming through, but it also retained that human connection, which is the thing that we were really, really was at risk with everybody being stuck in their homes and quarantining from a culture that had really been about physical locations in all these offices around the globe.
It's like intentionality, what I'm hearing at least, is intentionality around moments of serendipity. And then actually like knowing what you stand for. I'm rethinking how you can do same thing in a new way. It doesn't mean you have to change, like you sounds to me like Groupon didn't change like your values, your principles, what you guys stand for, how you guys operate. You mainly just intentionally changed how you did them. Thank you. Greg, Lily, anyone?
We had, I'll even take it to step 2 now that things opened up a little bit, but we're still not wide open.
Yeah.
So there's picnics all over Chicago with 10 or fewer Protiviti people, because I think personal face-to-face, even with masks, is going to help build that bridge that John was talking about. I mean, we've used and leveraged technology this entire time, but we have to start augmenting. And I think that's helpful. That keeps people engaged around innovation. Second, I would do recognition, whether it's financial or whether it's not financial, small groups, big meetings. Let's recognize innovation, creativity, and ideas. And then third, let's visit customers. I mean, that's where the ideas come from. So whether you do that over Zoom, whether you can just proactively say, hey, I just want to catch up. Truly, I think the innovation ideas that we find are from our clients, because they interact with us and they're a lot more objective about the service we're delivering than we are, right?
I think maybe I'll add to, I think at Molex, I don't know if I agree with the initial statement of being disconnected. I think by forcing the whole entire organization onto the Zoom or Teams platform internally, actually force the formalization of the water cooler talk. Like used to be before, you find out new initiatives like through the water cooler, at the coffee stand, right? Where you find out, so-and-so is working on this new sensor initiative and all of that. I think what happened with the COVID is that because everybody is staying at home, I think executives were forced to, having official blogs or official internal video communication more frequently than before to talk about the company initiative, to make an effort to align people. And what I found was I have more visibility and more understanding of the overall corporate kind of vision. What are we trying to do? Where are we moving towards? So that's number one. Secondly is I really enjoyed the fact that through Zoom and through Teams, kind of individually, I got to get more personally connected with people that I normally would not have gotten connected to. That, 5 or 10 minutes, back-to-back Zoom calls where people are a little bit late, forcing some of the small talks to talk about how are the kids doing? How are you surviving with the kids, at home, studying virtually. I think actually forced a more personal connection with somebody that you usually probably would not have had a chance to make a personal connection if we were in person. So I actually thought that my relationship had broadened because of that. And in regards to innovation, I think I maybe have a little bit different view on the innovation, how it happened, because I think 50% of the time, you want to innovate by yourself. You need to have deep thinking within yourself, by yourself in some ways. And there are 50% of the time, you need to get other people's feedback. And I actually find that in this virtual environment, I can more or less easily accomplish that. But I will say recently, I started going back to work about 2 to 3 days a week. So I do miss the human touch, right? When you see people, you kind of want to give them a hug, because you haven't seen each other for like 2 years. And, but most of the time I ask them, are you comfortable with that first? But you do miss that human touch element of it, which I think we all crave as a human being. So.
You're right, actually, because one thing I've heard, and actually one thing I've seen in research, and actually anecdotally through just speaking with employees, is that there's this feeling of like democratization of power, and just increased closeness. Like we're all on Zoom now, everybody's box is like the same size. No one can really talk over one another because it just stands out. And actually, in a way, we're closer. I've never, I mean, you guys are probably like a foot away from me. I don't really talk to people this close, even before the pandemic. So I agree, actually, Lily, and I take the challenge that, hey, maybe it's just a different type of connection, and it's just a different type of intimacy that breeds that innovation. Right. Okay. So I want to get the audience involved, and we are going to do an audience poll. I think maybe Paul, you're going to bring the, yeah, here we are. So guys, which one of the following is the biggest need area you're facing right now? Single choice. And then I'm going to invite the panelists to kind of talk about it, give some opinions. So please get engaged, play around with the panel poll, and in some time we'll give you the results.
All right, we're at about 50% now. Just waiting on a couple more to come on in.
Perfect. The suspense. While there's the suspense, Scott, I've got to say, are you on like a walking treadmill? Because at some point in the break, I thought you were dancing, but now I think you're like on a walking desk. Yeah, okay.
Love the content. Can't stop dancing. Yes.
I thought you were dancing. I was like, well, why not? It's break. Then I thought, oh no, actually, it's a bit too rhythmic. It looks like walking. There we go.
Yeah. I am a drummer. I appreciate you picking that up in my gait. Yep. Thank you.
My pleasure. Okay, so it looks like building awareness and marketing is coming out on top. Then we've got managing growth, investing in technology and tools, and raising capital funding. Panelists, though, what advice would you give people in the audience who are saying that their biggest need area right now is building awareness and marketing? I can imagine it's just changed. I mean, John, with Groupon, I guess how you market your activities has totally changed, and just in general across the market in general. So guys, what do you think? What advice?
Yeah, I think really quickly for us, it kind of came in two phases. So during the height of the quarantines, we definitely leaned into letting people know about merchants and activities that were COVID safe, and understanding how to protect themselves. I think now that things have begun to open up and people are getting back to that, we had a really cool campaign that we did in the spring and summertime, which was really asking people what was on their post-COVID bucket list. So what things they wanted to do. And so we invited people to share their lists and share them on social media, on Facebook and Instagram. And we had a sweepstakes around that. We picked some winners who got some travel packages and some other things. But it was really great to be part of that moment, to say the clouds are lifting a bit and people are getting back to things that they love, and being able to to celebrate that with them. So that was a huge part of our marketing for this year.
I guess, Mike, I think what COVID has brought on is the reach, right? Like you are able to broaden the reach with a virtual event that you perhaps were not able to do so before then. We were more localized marketing and advertising. And I think with that reach, you have to be very specific on how to reach your target audience. You have to think about, how do you stand out from the 10, 20 emails that everybody is getting about a virtual webinar or a virtual promotion kind of event, right, that are happening as well. So I think for me, it's how are you being purposeful with your messaging to the target audience that you are trying to reach.
I'll take a little different take on the question in terms of the biggest need area. I think whether it's marketing or raising capital or managing growth, I would encourage everybody to leverage their amazing new status as innovators, right? And take a look at this book. I'm sure you'll recognize it and have a copy of it on Rising Together. There's 100 people listed in here. John's in here. I mean, there's 100 people in this book that you could leverage, and there's an automatic connection. You're an innovator, you were named a top innovator, they're in the book, and reach out for advice and build your network. I think relationships are, whether it's Zoom or not, I'll tell you, people might not be looking for brand new friends. I mean, you might be at a point in your career that, listen, I don't need new friends, but they're still happy to give advice and spend some time with you, right? I think people underestimate that, and they don't take advantage of it because they think people aren't really going to want to talk to them. But that'd be my idea on any one of these need areas that you might be facing.
That's actually a good point. You know, seek counsel, and you are the average of the company you keep. And actually, if you refer to the book, then you're on great company. So, hey, I really, really like that. Now, guys, I want to encourage everybody to ask any questions in the chat. I actually would like to invite Paul, if there are any questions that you've seen come in before or anything you've seen in the Q&A. Otherwise, we'll keep going, but yeah, invite some questions.
Yeah, Tapi, thanks. Actually, there's one question that was submitted before the session by an audience member, Vikas Wally, and he wants to know, having newly instilled a culture of innovation at your company, how do you measure the progress of innovation as the actual business results could be a lagging indicator?
I can speak to how we do it at Groupon. We actually view innovation a little bit differently. We view business results as coming after something is put into production, but the innovation is really based on just the number of ideas we have, and really ultimately the number of questions we answer. So we'll ask ourselves questions that then we'll pose through that innovation about, what do consumers want? How do consumers think about voice applications? How do consumers think about doing things collectively with their friends? And we measure the innovation based on, are we answering those questions? And then those questions might ultimately lead to a product, but it starts with, do we have ideas? Are we testing those ideas in a lean way? And are we answering those core questions that we want?
I think one metric is to be sure you're getting back to people once they do offer suggestions, right? I mean, you've got to have some sort of an action plan, a response to say, hey, I don't know that this is going to work and here's why. But I think that's one metric I would really be sure, because otherwise people are making suggestions, ideas, they're following your process, and they feel it was a waste of time. And there's nothing more to just kind of crush innovation than people thinking they're wasting their time.
I think Molex, is being a traditional, maybe manufacturer, we are measuring innovation by the number of new releases that are going into the market. However, I would say this year we are embracing a little bit of a different measurement of innovation. Like we are, call it a self-internalization, a self-awareness of how we are doing by the eyes of our customers, by the eyes of our suppliers. So we started actually doing surveys that are sent out to our customers, our suppliers, our partners who have been working with us, as far as how they perceive us and how do we change that. I think one of the initiatives that we have launched where I would say innovation is really a progress for a big corporation. I mean, that's absolutely the truth for Molex. We can never say that, oh, we're good, we're there. You know, we know everything about Innovator. Absolutely not. I think it's still a work in progress very much for us. But one of the things that we have done was communicating about new capabilities that we have built. It's called the Thought Leadership Series at Molex. So it really kind of showcased to our partners, to our potential customers, as far as what sort of capability that we have. So I would say it's the feedback loop, though, showing everybody what we have done and getting that feedback from our customers or from the market of what they perceive as relevant to them is probably a better indicator for us as far as how innovative that we are being perceived, besides the regular kind of tracking of the new product development and R&D spending. So
Sounds like communication is a big one, right? And actually, Lily, I really, really appreciate the comments around perception, because in the work I do, we look at how our employees use technology to achieve the promise of work. And actually, a lot of it is around how do they feel, what do they think, as opposed to like what does the data say. So I really like that idea around perception, and then just being, as you mentioned, Greg, clear communication, transparent, keeping that information flow continually going. So fantastic. Okay, so now I'm going to move on to talking about a little bit about innovation in Chicago. I think everyone can say there are two things that bring us all here, right? We are from different places in the world. We probably have different accents, different everything, but there are two things we all have in common. First is the love of innovation, obviously. Second is the love of Chicago. And actually, I'm a Brit, but I genuinely love Chicago. This is actually my home. I think I have found my place in the world. But John, I'm going to ask you a question about Groupon. So Groupon is often looked at as one of the early pioneers of technology entrepreneurship in Chicago. As someone who's been a leader in technology for both Groupon and other local firms, what do you think about being involved and connected with the local community? How can it help an organization stay innovative and help an organization grow?
I muted myself for the vacuum. It's something that, I have such a deep connection to the city. I grew up here, but I really have enjoyed seeing Chicago become this hub for innovation, particularly for technical innovation. I think, being part of this community is so important because, as we've talked about earlier in the day, like, innovation is about lifelong learning. Mm-hmm. And when people ask me what keeps me up at night, I tell them I don't ever want to be Blockbuster. I don't ever want to be the business that misses the trends, that misses technology shifts, that doesn't challenge ourselves to be better and be different. And so I think being part of the community is really important. One, it helps ensure that Chicago continues to be this vibrant business community, this vibrant innovation community. But I learn a ton from working with startup companies through organizations like Hyde Park Angels or mentoring CTOs. They teach me things about technology and ways of looking at different customer problems that I would never get through my day-to-day work. And I think it's a huge part of what I bring back to my own company, my own team, but also I think collaboration, that openness to learn, that openness to say, I used to think this, but this is a better way, is the best way to make sure that innovation happens.
Yeah, that is one bit of advice that I once received was, Toppy, be slow to form an opinion and quick to lose your opinion, like to let go of it. And I think that's so important, right? So you've got to be willing to think like a scientist. I'm sure a lot of you here have read that Adam Grant book, Think Again. And he talks a lot about continually thinking like a scientist and continually challenging a hypothesis, never remaining too, in fact, actively look to disprove what you believe. Mm-hmm. And John, I actually really like how you said, like, leaning into the local community helps with preventing inertia. But what about when it comes to continually going when things fail? I know when we spoke yesterday, I told you guys about this podcast I listened to with James Dyson. And before he created like the first Dyson vacuum cleaner, he had like 5,400 different prototypes that all failed. And there we go. Thank you, James. 5127. What he did is he literally changed one item each time, so he could be very sure like what actually was driving the change. Now that requires like patience, it requires like vision, it requires hope and some form of like belief in a better world. But beyond everything I've just mentioned, like, what would that look like to you in your experience, and especially like within Groupon? Because I'm sure when it came to helping some of the local vendors move to digital, I don't think that was probably the first idea. I'm sure there was probably other things you guys tried.
Yeah, there were. I think this concept, in the tech world, we usually refer to this as fail fast, right? Mm-hmm. That you have to embrace the idea that things are going to go wrong. That might be the way that systems operate. You might have a bug, you might have something else, but it also comes with ideas. And you really have to focus on the idea that what you really want is learning. I'll go back to what I said about how we measure innovation. We measure it by learning. We know that like some tiny percentage of all the different ideas that we have and try out in some way will actually wind up being commercially viable, but it's the learning that's the really important part. And so knowing that we're going to try this, we're going to measure it in an objective way. If it works, we're going to scale it. And if it doesn't, we learn from it and we move on. It's just, you just can't get emotionally attached to the idea that everything is going to be perfect or that you're not going to fail. It's something I tell everyone from like newly minted software engineers to CEOs, like, yeah, things are going to go wrong. It's how you react to things going wrong that actually makes the difference.
Yeah. And I guess it's great to have like a culture where that is kind of like part of the DNA. In fact, like not a blame culture, as they call it. Thank you. Lily, I've got a question for you. Okay. Many of the organizations that are in the top 100 Chicago Innovation Award finalists, the startups, or even like growing companies, looking for investments and partnerships from larger organizations like Molex. Now, what advice would you give these entrepreneurs to help them secure the critical connections and funding? I know, Greg, you mentioned you've got the book, like refer to your network, but Lily, what else would you even suggest?
So I'll maybe follow John's theme, right? Preset their expectations. So there's good and bad with working with corporate. And I'll be truthfully honest, and you're going to get the good, the bad, and the ugly from me. The reality is working with corporate is a pain, right? We move slow. We don't move as fast as the startup. So the very first advice I would say is setting the right expectation on the engagement and the timing, because some corporates are not startup ready. I call them not startup ready, as in they want to innovate. They, it's the shiny new penny syndrome. But by the time that the startup is like, okay, we're ready to go, let's go. And you're going to be frustrated if you don't set the expectation where, we have a lot of hoops that we have to jump through, a lot of red tapes to break in order to kind of start working with the startup. So that's number one, just setting realistic expectation on that engagement. Secondly is aligning on the vision and synergy, how the two companies will collaborate together, how we're benefiting each other, and have alignment on the priority of it. I think whenever I work out a investment deal with a startup company, it's the very first thing I do is making sure that what we're hoping to get out of the relationship is mutually beneficial for both the startup as well as Molex. If that equation is not there, or it's single-sided, it only benefits one way or the other, you can plan on having a negative impact kind of down the road with that relationship. And third and last is invest into the relationship, be transparent, be sincere with the relationship engagement that you have with the corporate, but always be ready with a plan B or C. I don't know how many times that, whether it's corporate pivoting away, like it used to be a number one priority, and now it's not even on the top 3 priority list, or even the startup pivoting away from a business model or a target audience that no longer is valid or makes sense anymore. I think it's important to have a plan B, but when you do engage with a corporate, do invest and stay transparent and be upfront.
Oh, powerful. I love it, Lily, straight to the point. And actually what you're describing are like sincere leadership skills and leadership traits and behaviors that you have to like exemplify as a leader in innovation. And actually, Greg, I'd like to open that up to you. I mean, a huge part of being able to drive innovation in an organization is leadership. And I'm curious, Greg, what is your personal leadership style and how does innovation play a role in that?
One word, Tope, it's reinvention. And I mentioned I've been in consulting 40 years. I've reinvented myself at least 6 or 8 times, or else you're not relevant. I'll give you a current example. I attended a talk by Penny Pritzker, Mike Gampson, Chris Gladwin, and they were all talking about P33. And you talk about innovation, and really that entire initiative that is working to transform the image of Chicago to one of analytics and technology and innovation. And I wanted to see how Protiviti could help with that. And Penny Pritzker, she's on the board of Microsoft, former Commerce Secretary. I reached out to her, she connected me, and Protiviti's been a consultant to P33. And we're also on the Chicago Quantum Exchange, because quantum is such a critical component to that transformation of Chicago and that image. So we became parts of that. I transformed myself into somebody who's connecting our firm Protiviti into the market for quantum services. Just yesterday, a Midwest firm has hired us to build out a proof of concept using quantum annealers for the optimization problems. I mean, this is all largely because of these innovation concepts and investments that have been made right here. And I think it really stems from reinvention. You just got to jump in sometimes and do some things before you're ready, before the market's ready. And in this case, before quantum is even ready, we're out there working to prove it out. So I think that's fundamental to innovation, reinvention.
I like that reinvention of the self, like this idea of being on this continual incline. You know, when some people talk to me about like peaking in life, I think I hope to die on the incline. I never want to peak. Like I don't want to live the part that's going down. It's not.
I'm with you. Right.
And actually, that just should be the same for organizations. And the reality is, you just have to continually reinvent yourself. That's a good one. I like that. I really, really like it. Now, guys, we're losing track of time. Actually, I'm losing track of time, so I'm really enjoying this conversation. We have 5 minutes. I want to invite any further questions from the audience. Paul, I don't know if you see any, or if anybody wants to come off mute and ask a question.
You know, there's one more question that was submitted ahead of time, and it's a fun one. So I'll ask that, and then we'll have time for if anyone else wants to speak up and ask their question after. But this is from Scott Speitler, and he wants to know for each of the panelists, real quick, if you could go back and tell your 18-year-old self something about business and innovation, what would it be?
Mine would be don't overpluck your eyebrows. That's my kind of observation. I went too far. But anybody else?
So I think for me, it would be you're always swimming upstream, but celebrate the small successes that you are seeing, because you know that you are probably making a rippling effect with other people that has touched you.
I'd say be uncomfortable. If you're in your comfort zone, you're not growing. So just wake up and just be uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think for me, it would be find people who challenge your thinking. I look back and think about all the great ideas and all the changes in the way I approach things that came from somebody saying, you know, the way you do that is wrong. you could get better, or just like I view it different. You know, somebody saying I view it differently, and here's why. That would be my advice.
Love it. And actually, I've got another one I'll say. Mine is play, because life is about play, and actually children play and they are so creative. And the most of my most creative ideas, most innovative business decisions, especially within Kraft Heinz, especially when we had to move 40,000 employees remote, came through play, came through being curious, came through looking to the world to give me inspiration for, I do believe the answers to the world exist in the world already. So jokes aside, that would be mine. So we have 2 minutes. Panelists, I have really enjoyed this. Actually, the last 45 minutes have totally flown by. I was going to end and say, give us a word of wisdom, but I think you kind of already do. You already have, apologies. But this has been so fantastic. I think I have really taken a lot out of it. I'm glad to have been connected to you all. And I hope you have all enjoyed the day and had a fantastic session. Luke, I'm going to hand back over to you.
Thank you, Tapi. I couldn't agree more. The time absolutely flew by. You were a wonderful moderator today. And John, Greg, and Lily, you are a superb group of panelists. I loved your comments about how innovation is it's a mindset. It's about how you react to things going wrong. We sure know a lot of things have gone wrong in the past year and a half or so, and they always will, or being uncomfortable, or being, comfortable in the uncomfortable. Always asking why things are done the way they are, being a contrarian, being connected to community, like this great community here, and also making sure you have metrics so you can keep score and know that innovation is working or it's not working, and what are you learning and how do you change. So, you know, I could go on, but the overarching summary is so much great advice here, and thank you for sharing it with our group. And lastly, I just want to thank our whole audience that is here and tuned in today. I hope The ideas that were shared during today's Practical Innovator from this panel, also from the faculty, will prove valuable to all of your organizations and all of your journeys as innovators. And for the top 100 finalists in particular, congrats again on making it this far out of 425 nominees. And as I mentioned earlier, we'll be publicly announcing all of you early next week. So the cat will be out of the bag. We're going to celebrate the top 100 to the whole city when we launch the People's Choice Award voting competition. So keep an eye out for that email next week with the details. And also please be sure to save the date of December 7th. It is the 20th annual Chicago Innovation Awards ceremony, and we are so excited for it and hope all of you can be there. So until then, have a great rest of the day, enjoy the weekend, and we hope to see you all again soon. So take care, everyone.